Andy Johnson. I am talking about using inquiry to create authentic writing activities. What do I mean by authentic writing activities? That means you're writing for real purposes, not some cute story starter. It's where students' authentic writing activities are writing to express their ideas, describe what they saw, what they think, what they believe. This is more motivating, and it reflects this natural inclination that humans have to write, to express, to share their ideas. Authentic writing activities or experiences is writing that reflects the real world, not school experiences, but it makes this connection to the real world. When we have these kinds of experiences, and this is why I like inquiry, it provides a scaffold. When we're teaching children to write, we want to provide a scaffold or a structure that enables all students to be able to do this, to be able to do more complex things, more complex thinking, more complex writing. You need some sort of scaffold. This reflects the Vygotskian idea that thinking also moves from outside to in. This type of authentic writing experience also represents whole to part instruction, which is more effective than effect to whole instruction. We learn best by seeing the whole first, being immersed in an authentic writing activity, that's the whole, and getting instruction on the little parts in that context. Now, inquiry is the perfect multi-purpose medium for teaching writing, science, math, inductive analysis. Inquiry really is beyond subject. It hits one of many standards, and it's excellent for teaching, developing important cognitive processes. Inquiry learning is a high-level teaching strategy, but once you understand the basic processes, it can be adopted and adapted for a variety of purposes and settings, and it is pretty easy to use. Now, this is science in a sense, but science is not a subject. Science is a verb. To science. There's no scientific method. There are many methods of science. And the scientific process simply is asking a question and using data to answer that question. This is the essence of science. This is what inquiry learning is: asking questions, gathering data, using that data to answer the questions. And inquiry learning is appropriate for students in kindergarten through graduate school. I'm going to show you some examples of inquiry learning at the kindergarten level. What's the weather today? That's the question. Collect the data. You see this nice data retrieval chart: sunshine, sunshine, cloudy, etc. Ask a question, collect data, answer the question. What's the most common M&M color? That's another type of inquiry learning. Ask the question, gather data. You're learning about graphing, about math, and as you're going to see, we can write lab reports to create a writing activity as well. Do students prefer hot dogs or hamburgers? They ask the question, gather the data. That's a data retrieval chart. They simply have tally marks. Then they are able to write the report. And you're going to see that in just a minute. But I want you to get a feel for some examples of what types of inquiry questions you can ask. Here's a great one for first grade, second grade. What kind of sight words are in this book? Data retrieval chart up there, tally marks, and then they can present their data on a graph. Asking questions, gathering data, using the data to answer the questions. What kind of desserts do students like to eat? Ask the question, gather the data, put it on a graph, use the data to answer the question. Here's a good one. We're doing this with my undergraduate class. What traits do undergraduate students value in a significant other? We actually did this with one of my classes. It was an example of inductive analysis. We looked at the groups, and this is the data. Ask the question, gather the data, use the data to answer the question. More on that later. Inquiry learning. We want to create a scaffold or a structure to enable students to do this. We can't expect students at any level to be able to do this without some sort of scaffold or structure to enable them to do this. 3 types of scaffolding: questions, data retrieval chart, and the lab report, and we'll look at each one of those. You can provide structure initially by asking the questions for students, by providing the initial questions. Eventually, students will learn to ask their own question. Do students prefer hot dogs or hamburgers? I'm going to give that question. After several inquiry projects, they'll eventually begin to be able to ask their own questions. Now, I like to start with closed response questions or multiple choice questions. Eventually, you can ask open-ended questions. That should be a 3 and not a 2. Sorry about that. Inductive analysis would be something like we asked. What traits do you value in a significant other? They answered it. We looked for groups. We reported in terms of groups. What kind of sandwiches do you like? Students simply reported the sandwiches. We looked for groups, put them in groups. Here are types of questions that you could ask at different levels for inquiry, and you're going to see how this relates to writing in just a minute, but I want to give you a sense, and you can stop the video if you want and look at the types of questions that can be used for inquiry projects. These can be related to curriculum areas as well. And again, you can stop. Here's a closed response question. What kind of pets do students have? What do students think is the most important event that happened this year? That's open-ended. Ask the question, look for groups, inductive analysis, gather the data, etc. Structure is also created by using a data retrieval chart, and that's simply a graphic organizer that students use to collect and organize the data. And to help students initially, I create this data retrieval chart for them. Here's a 4th grade inquiry project. What do students do at recess? Gave them that chart. They went out, simply made tally marks, gathered the data, brought it in. They were ready to create their lab report. What kind of TV shows do students enjoy watching? There is the lab report. Males and females. What season does our 1st grade class like best? Another simple example of a data retrieval chart. Graphic organizer to collect and organize the data. What behaviors occur on the playground? Data retrieval chart. Favorite dessert? And here it's separated males and females, a variety of forms, but you understand the principle. We create structure by giving students the data retrieval chart initially. Thinking moves from outside to in. Eventually, they are able to create their own data retrieval charts. What type of behavior goes on in study hall? Data retrieval chart, tally mark, gather data, organize data, communicate data. Words with SH in them. Oh, this is a great inquiry project for 1st and 2nd grade. Inductive analysis. They are then looking in the book for SH words. This is a great way to reinforce letter sounds. Words with suffixes in. With this data retrieval chart, they're actually, just like the one above, recording the actual words, reinforcing data collection. They can then report that data. Kinds of nouns in this book. And again, they're looking at nouns. We're reinforcing nouns and different types of nouns. What is 5th graders' favorite kind of movie? And they can organize it, boys and girls. That is a data retrieval chart, tally marks, you get the idea. And the 3rd way of providing structure is a lab report. The lab report contains 3 sections: questions or conditions, results or data, and conclusions and ideas. This is an authentic form of writing. Students are writing to share and communicate their thinking, their idea. It can be done in large group first, and it should be done in large group first. And again, thinking moves from outside to in. Then work in pairs or small groups. If you're using small group, it's a cooperative learning project. And then individually. Vygotsky, thinking starts on the social level, moves internally. Keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple. As Bruner says, once students understand and grasp the basic structure, then they can learn at higher and higher levels and make it more complex as needed. So the lab report has these three parts. It has the conditions or the questions, and it tells the conditions part tells the question, this is the question and how they are going to collect data. That's what's found in the conditions section. And I'll be showing you an example of that in just a minute. The results section contains just the result of that inquiry project. And then the conclusions or ideas section, what does it mean? What does the data tell you? How will you use that information? For example, our research group wanted to find out what kinds of movies fifth grade students like to watch. We also thought it would be interesting to see if boys like different movies than girls. We created a data retrieval chart, and you can read the rest of that, but that tells the research question, the conditions, how they collected the data, and it shows the actual data retrieval chart there. That's part one. Part two is the results, just the data. This is what we found. And there's the data all collected there. The third part is the ideas or the conclusions. What do the data mean? What can we do with that data? Comedies are the kinds of movies that most fifth grade students like. There's the data. This is what it means. Both boys and girls like this kind of movie. Data. If we're going to have a party with both boys and girls, this is the kind of movie we would get. More boys and girls liked action adventure. More girls than boys liked horror thrillers. Nobody liked non-fiction movies. All right, so we have the conditions, the question and how you're going to collect the data, the results, just the data, and the ideas or conclusions, what that data means or how you might use it. Example number 2, and notice this structure of thinking. Lab report. Our group wanted to find out, to collect data and I would give them this as a form of structure. And we are going to sit down with our class and we're going to actually write this together. So we'll see it up on the large screen. What should we write? What's the question? I'll type it in as they tell me, and I'll have students type it in as they work with me. Okay, in large group many times, in your own classroom, large group, large group, large group. The results of this inquiry project are presented below. And we'd write that together and they would put the data there. Conclusions. The results show that most seem to, males seem to, females seem to, based on this blank. So you see, the lab report, we're doing it together in large group many times, giving them this nice template, this structure. After many times in large group, they could do this in small group as a cooperative learning project. Maybe I would have one writer, one thinker, one data collector. Eventually they can do it in pairs and then individually. The last thing, the topic for the inquiry can be based or related to a curriculum project. You can do inquiry projects in social science, in language arts, in reading. I like to look for hot topics that students are interested in. My undergraduate class is interested in the question of what traits are of value to significant others. What traits do people find of value in significant others? That's a hot topic, so I'm going to go with that. The motivation, the energy is there to create inquiry. And as well, surveys are a type of question. Inquiry learning, asking a question, collecting data to answer the question, and then a lab report to communicate the results. It is an excellent way of creating authentic writing activities, and it is a way of thinking that moves from outside to in.